My wife got pregnant by my stepbrother, and when I asked her to take a paternity test. My name is Eldridge, a 34-year-old man, and I've been married to my wife, Marjorie, who is 29, for 2 years. Our relationship has been relatively standard. We met at a professional conference several years ago. Initially, we were just friends, but over time, we realized our feelings for each other ran deeper, and we began dating. After 3 years together, I proposed, and we've now been a couple for nearly 6 years. Throughout our relationship, we've faced few complications. Marjorie is intelligent, beautiful, and has been a wonderful partner. I've always strived to be a good husband, and together, we've shared many happy moments. Approximately 6 months ago, my stepbrother, Clarence, who is 28, lost his job. Instead of immediately seeking new employment, he decided to take some time off to travel and find himself. Clarence has always been somewhat unpredictable and spontaneous. It took considerable effort from my father and stepmother to convince him to attend college and earn a degree. He's often had grand ideas that required intervention to prevent him from making poor decisions. Losing his job due to attending a work meeting under the influence was a significant issue. Despite his past behavior, he expressed a desire to quit drinking. Although I feared this might be another fleeting endeavor, I chose to support him for my father's sake. My parents divorced when I was a child, and during my teenage years, my father married Clarence's mother. When Clarence asked if he could stay at my place for a few weeks to explore New York, I was hesitant. I wasn't keen on the idea, but my father and stepmother urged me to accommodate him, and I felt compelled to agree. I discussed it with Marjorie, and she was supportive, so I reluctantly consented. Clarence moved in 2 months ago. I set clear boundaries, no bringing guests into the apartment, and while he could come and go as he pleased, his schedule shouldn't disrupt our sleep. Surprisingly, he respected these rules initially. He often stayed out late, sometimes returning as late as 7 a.m. when I was preparing for work. Despite this, he was pleasant, joined us for dinners, and even cooked for us occasionally. This behavior was unexpected. It wasn't the Clarence I had known. Marjorie and I had planned a weekend trip to Las Vegas during Clarence's second weekend with us, as I had some work obligations there. We asked Clarence to look after the apartment in our absence. However, the night before our departure, Marjorie developed a severe stomach flu. We hoped she might feel better by morning, but her condition worsened, making it impossible for her to travel. I attempted to reschedule my work commitments and postpone our trip, but it was too last minute, and I had to go alone. I felt terrible leaving her in that state, but I took solace in knowing Clarence would be there to assist if needed. He assured me he would stay in and prepare home-cooked meals for her. I promised to return early Saturday morning and left for my trip. Reflecting on it now, I can't believe I didn't foresee what happened next. I traveled to Las Vegas alone, returned the following day, and found Marjorie feeling better. I didn't think much of it at the time. However, after that weekend, I noticed Clarence spending more time at home. Previously, he would go out daily, but now he stayed in for several consecutive days. When I inquired if everything was all right, he shrugged it off, saying he was trying to save money. I didn't dwell on it, but then I began noticing other things that unsettled me. One day, I came home from work to find Marjorie already there. She mentioned taking a half-day due to a headache and forgetting to inform me. Another time, I arrived home early and saw Clarence and Marjorie entering the building together. They claimed to have coincidentally met outside. While these incidents could have been innocent, I had an uneasy feeling. I had never doubted Marjorie's fidelity, and although Clarence was unpredictable, I didn't think he would betray me in such a manner. Yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. I knew I couldn't make baseless accusations without evidence, as it would cause unnecessary turmoil within my family. So, I took a straightforward approach. I asked Clarence about his plans and how long he intended to stay with us. I expressed that while it was nice having him around, perhaps he should start considering his next steps. Thankfully, he took the hint and said he would move out within the week. Marjorie was present during this conversation and remained silent, which I found unsettling. Clarence moved out, and I tried to dismiss my doubts, focusing instead on my marriage. I began to believe I had been paranoid and that nothing inappropriate had occurred. I felt embarrassed for suspecting Marjorie, who had been a perfect partner throughout our years together. But then, something happened 2 weeks ago that shattered my newfound peace. We discovered that Marjorie was pregnant 2 months alone, to be precise. You can probably see where this is going. 2 months ago, Clarence was living with us. I felt a wave of nausea and dread. To provide some context, being a few years older than Marjorie, I was ready to settle down and start a family by the time I was 30. When we began dating, I knew she was the one I wanted to marry, but she felt she was too young for children and wanted to wait a few years. I supported her decision, even though it wasn't what I desired. We agreed to wait until she turned 30 to start trying for children, so we consistently used protection. Marjorie wasn't on any hormonal birth control due to adverse reactions, so we were always extra cautious, and I always used protection. Of course, accidents can happen, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The timing was deeply troubling. Marjorie expressed her desire to keep the baby, viewing it as a happy, albeit unplanned, development. Under different circumstances, I would have been overjoyed, as I'd longed for children. But I was in agony. I tried to appear happy for Marjorie, but inside, I was tormented. I couldn't discuss my feelings with friends, fearing judgment, but I couldn't rid myself of the negative thoughts and suspicions. After a week of inner turmoil, I realized I couldn't continue living with these doubts. I had to confront Marjorie. I knew this conversation could have disastrous consequences for our marriage, and if I were wrong, she might never forgive me. But the possibility that she was pregnant with my stepbrother's child was unbearable. We attended our first prenatal checkup, completed blood work and tests, but all I felt was devastation. I couldn't bear it any longer, so I prepared myself for the worst and decided to talk to her. During dinner about a week ago, I told Marjorie that we needed to discuss something important. She was immediately concerned. I was terrified but tried to be direct. I apologized. I apologized for having these thoughts, and then I asked her plainly, was the baby really mine? Marjorie froze. Her face went pale for a second, then flushed bright red. She stared at me like I'd just insulted her entire existence. And then came the shouting. She called me a heartless man, said I was accusing her of something vile, and demanded to know where this was coming from. I told her that it wasn't just suspicion out of thin air, it was the timing. She was exactly 2 months pregnant. Clarence had moved out 2 months ago. It was too close for comfort. That only made her angrier. She was yelling now, so much that the neighbors probably heard, saying she had done nothing but love me and that I was destroying our relationship with baseless distrust. I tried to stay calm. I didn't want a screaming match. I told her that this wasn't about punishing her, it was about clarity. I needed peace of mind. I told her I wasn't accusing her without cause, but I had observed things. Like how often she and Clarence were at home together when I wasn't there. The times they came home together. Her sudden half-days. Her silence when I told Clarence it was time to move out. At first, she tried to play it off like I was reading too much into nothing. But when I brought up wanting a paternity test, that's when she lost all composure. She said I was cruel. That I was asking her to prove something she shouldn't have to, and that demanding such a thing was humiliating. I told her I wasn't trying to hurt her, but I couldn't live with these questions in my head. I tried to ignore them, tried to bury them, but with the pregnancy now in the picture, I couldn't. I explained that if she truly had nothing to hide, a simple test would confirm that and help us move forward. But she kept saying no, refusing outright, calling it degrading. I told her, not proudly, but honestly, that this was a deal-breaker. If she refused the test, I couldn't stay in the marriage. She went quiet for a moment, then said she needed time to think. That night, we slept in separate rooms. The following days were tense. We barely spoke. She came home late each evening and locked herself in the bedroom. I tried to talk to her multiple times, but she either ignored me or got agitated, so I stopped trying. Then came the morning that changed everything. I woke up and realized she hadn't come home at all the night before. Her side of the bed was untouched. I called and texted, but she didn't answer. I went to work, distracted and anxious, and by noon, I couldn't focus. I left early and went home to wait for her. Still nothing. By 9 p.m., I was genuinely worried. I called her assistant at work. That's when I found out she'd taken 2 personal days. The assistant seemed surprised that I didn't know. That hit me hard. Not only had she left, but she had planned it and kept it from me. I called some of her friends, hoping maybe she was staying with one of them. No luck. No one had heard from her. Finally, as a last resort, I called her mother. Her mom, Cynthia, was immediately concerned. She said she hadn't heard from Marjorie either and would try calling her. We agreed to wait an hour, and then we'd consider contacting the police. Just as I was about to reach for my phone to call 911, it rang. It was Marjorie. She sounded fine. Calm. Annoyed, even. She said she just needed space to sort things out and that I didn't need to worry. She told me not to involve her mom again because I was just stressing her family out. I asked where she was. She wouldn't say. I asked when she'd be back. She said the next morning and hung up. When she walked in the next day, she looked serene. Too calm. Almost cheerful. I was so confused. I asked her again where she had gone. I fixed it, she said. I stared at her, not understanding. Fixed what? This whole mess. The arguments. Your suspicions. The stress. She paused and smiled, like she was proud of herself. I ended the pregnancy. For a few seconds, I didn't say anything. I thought maybe I'd misheard her. So I asked again. And she confirmed it. She had gone off, without telling me, and gotten an abortion. Now, she said, you don't have to worry about anything. We can just move on. Fresh start. I don't even remember what I said next, or if I said anything at all. I just remember getting up from the couch, grabbing my keys, and leaving the apartment. I could barely think. I was scared I'd say or do something I couldn't take back. She tried to follow me, but I told her firmly to stay away. I called my lawyer before I even got to my car. I told her I wanted to file for divorce, effective immediately. I didn't want to wait. I didn't want to talk about it. I just wanted out. The next morning, I met with my lawyer and gave her the full story. Everything. From Clarence moving in, to the timeline of the pregnancy, to the abrupt abortion. She said that while it wasn't always easy to get a clean divorce with no alimony involved, we had a chance. Marjorie had a solid income, no kids, and now, a pattern of deception that could be demonstrated. I also called Clarence. He was in Kentucky at the time. I didn't waste time. I told him everything, that I was divorcing Marjorie, and I just wanted one honest answer. Did you sleep with her? There was a long silence. Then he said, I'm sorry, Eldridge. That was all I needed. I didn't say another word to Clarence. I ended the call and checked myself into a small hotel near my office. I needed to be alone. I needed space to think, to breathe. That evening, I didn't eat. I just lay on the stiff hotel mattress, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of every second of the past 6 years pressing down on me. All of the sacrifices, the plans we made, the way I adjusted my life for Marjorie, all of it felt like a cruel joke now. The woman I married, the life I thought I had, it was like watching a memory fade while the truth sat glaring me in the face. The next day, I returned to our apartment while Marjorie was at work. I called ahead to her assistant, told her it was a surprise. She didn't question it. When I arrived, I packed up her belongings, clothes, shoes, personal items, into 3 large suitcases and placed them just outside the front door. I didn't want to throw things out or be spiteful, but I couldn't bear to have her things in the space that now felt polluted by betrayal. Afterward, I called a locksmith and had the locks changed. It felt final. It felt necessary. Then I packed a few of my own essentials into an overnight bag and left before Marjorie returned. I didn't want a confrontation. I didn't want another speech about second chances or starting fresh. That door was closed. Later that night, my phone rang. It was her. I didn't answer. She called again. And again. The texts started pouring in. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. I didn't read a single one. After about an hour, the messages stopped briefly. I thought maybe she had given up. Then I got a message from Clarence. It read, she reached out to me. Asked if you called. I told her everything. I'm sorry again. I didn't respond. But that text sparked something in me. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was spite. Maybe it was just the need for someone else to know the truth, the whole truth. Marjorie had always maintained a carefully curated image with her family. They were old-fashioned, reserved people from a quiet town in Virginia. They had pressured her from the day we got married about grandchildren. At every holiday gathering, they would subtly, sometimes not so subtly, comment about when we would start trying. And every single time, I protected her. I took the heat. I told them it was a mutual decision to wait. What they didn't know was that it was her decision, not mine. I had always wanted children. She didn't. And I respected that. I never once blamed her. Never told her parents the truth. But now? After she had deceived me, betrayed me, and ended what could have been my child's life without a word? I didn't feel obligated to protect her image anymore. So I called her mother. Cynthia answered quickly. She sounded anxious. I calmly explained the situation to her. I told her that I had filed for divorce because Marjorie had violated my trust in the worst way. At first, she didn't believe me. I could hear the disbelief in her voice. So I gave her the timeline. I told her Clarence admitted to the affair. I told her we had documentation of the pregnancy, the appointments, everything. And then I told her about the abortion, that Marjorie had terminated the pregnancy without discussing it with me. I didn't dramatize it. I didn't yell. I simply told the truth. Cynthia was silent. For a long time. Then she said, "I don't even know who my daughter is anymore." That was the last thing she said before hanging up. I knew I wouldn't have to wait long for the fallout. Sure enough, an hour later, Marjorie was calling again, this time non-stop. I finally picked up, just to end it. Her voice was shrill with anger. "How dare you tell my mother?" "You should have thought of that before," I said flatly. "You've ruined my life," she screamed. "They've disowned me. I have nowhere to go." "You made those choices, Marjorie. Actions have consequences. You're being petty. You're dragging my family into our problems." "I didn't drag them into anything." "You did when you crossed the line. I just stopped covering for you." She said a lot after that, some things I can't even recall. Angry, desperate things. Then the threats came. "You'll regret this. I'll take everything you have. I'll make this divorce a nightmare for you." I didn't argue. I simply said, "From now on, speak to my attorney. Goodbye." And I hung up. A few hours later, I received a call from her father, Walter. He sounded tired, but his voice was steady. "I'm sorry, son," he said. "I don't know what to say. I don't understand what she was thinking. I always thought she was better than this." I thanked him for the call, told him I appreciated it, and that I was sorry it had to come to this. Then he said something I didn't expect: "We're cutting her off. She needs to face the consequences of her actions. It's time she learned." He asked if I could send him copies of the medical documents. I agreed. I should have felt some sort of satisfaction. Some sense of justice. But I didn't. I just felt empty. For the next few days, Marjorie kept trying to contact me, more calls, more texts. Some were angry. Others were pleading. The emotional whiplash made it impossible to feel anything other than exhaustion. I blocked her number. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted peace. But part of me wondered, had I taken things too far? I didn't regret filing for divorce. I didn't regret kicking her out of the apartment. I didn't even regret exposing the truth to her family. But a small voice in the back of my mind kept whispering, "You didn't have to go that far." Still, I knew I had done what I believed was right. And after 6 years of loyalty, patience, and compromise only to be repaid with betrayal, I had no more energy left for guilt. In the weeks that followed, things moved quickly and messily. Marjorie, as she had promised, tried to make the divorce as difficult as possible. Through her lawyer, she made unreasonable demands, including a large share of the assets and monthly alimony, despite earning a sizable salary herself. My attorney, Nadine, was sharp, calm, and incredibly thorough. She advised me not to react emotionally, no matter how outrageous the claims. We gathered all documentation, including medical records from the initial prenatal visit, messages from Clarence, and the statement of admission I had recorded during our final call. Darren, for all his faults, agreed to give a sworn affidavit confirming the affair. I wasn't surprised when Marjorie doubled down on denial during the initial mediation. She claimed Clarence had misinterpreted their closeness, and that I had exaggerated everything. But Nadine was prepared. We had evidence, witnesses, and dates that aligned too precisely for her story to hold weight. Then came the depositions. For anyone unfamiliar, depositions are like test runs of a trial, but under oath. Marjorie was forced to answer questions, and the inconsistencies in her responses only weakened her case. Darren gave his deposition next. He was nervous, clearly ashamed, but cooperative. He admitted everything, that the affair had started the weekend I went to Las Vegas, that they had continued seeing each other for weeks afterward, even meeting up after he moved out. He even admitted they never used protection. That hit me like a punch to the chest. I didn't flinch in the room, but I felt the burn crawl up my neck. Darren also confessed he didn't know about the pregnancy or abortion and said that if he had, he would have come clean much earlier. He also provided photographs. I hadn't known about those. Apparently, he and Marjorie had taken some pictures during their brief fling. Not explicit, but clearly intimate. It made it impossible for her to deny what had happened. After the depositions, her legal team changed their tone. Suddenly, there were new offers, more modest, more reasonable. Her attorneys knew they couldn't win a case where infidelity was so thoroughly documented, and where the opposing party, me, had maintained consistent testimony and behaved respectfully through the process. We entered into settlement negotiations. To be clear, I never wanted to bleed her dry. I wasn't looking to ruin her financially or drag this out longer than necessary. I just wanted fairness. I had always paid more into the household expenses. The apartment was mine long before we married. We had no children, no shared business, and she had a lucrative position at a marketing firm. Eventually, we settled. Marjorie agreed to walk away with no claim to my property, no alimony, and a clean split of shared savings and minor assets. She would retrieve the remainder of her personal belongings through a scheduled delivery service. There would be no further contact, and all communications, if necessary, would go through legal counsel. I walked out of the courthouse not with joy, but with quiet relief. It was done. 6 years of a relationship, 2 years of marriage, all dismantled in a matter of months. I'd imagined a future with her. Kids. Growing old together. Sunday dinners. Now I found myself living in a newly silent apartment, surrounded by memories I couldn't trust anymore. And yet, something surprising happened. I began sleeping better. I began feeling like myself again, someone I hadn't seen in a long time. My friends, whom I had distanced myself from during the worst of the ordeal, slowly re-entered my life. I began going for early morning walks. I even picked up an old hobby, restoring vintage radios. Something about rebuilding something broken gave me peace. One quiet Sunday morning, my father called me. "Just wanted to check in on you," he said. We talked for a while. Then he added, "But you should know Clarence and Marjorie are, apparently seeing each other again." I sat with that news for a moment. "Wow," I said, not sarcastically. "Just tired." "They really found their way back to each other?" "Seems so," Dad replied. "Clarence found a job in the city again. Moved back a few weeks ago. Your stepmother's not speaking to him. And I told him not to contact me anymore." "Appreciate you telling me." There was a pause. Then he said something I didn't expect. "I'm proud of how you handled this, son." It couldn't have been easy. It wasn't. But hearing those words helped more than I could admit. After we hung up, I thought long and hard about that news. Clarence and Marjorie, together. Again. It didn't hurt the way it would have 6 months ago. I didn't feel rage or betrayal. If anything, I felt pity. Not for myself, but for them. For two people who had burned every bridge behind them, only to run back to each other with nothing but ashes in their hands. I've learned that grief, betrayal, and healing aren't straight lines. They spiral. They loop. They take you back through memories, over and over, until eventually, they begin to fade. Not disappear, but dull. You remember what happened, but it no longer defines you. As for me, I'm doing all right now. I've focused on my work, spent time reconnecting with old friends and my sister's kids, who remind me every time they run into my arms that love, real, genuine love, still exists. I don't know what the future holds. But I do know this: I stayed true to who I was. I gave my marriage everything I had. And when it broke, I didn't lose myself in the rubble. To anyone going through something similar, keep your head up. Speak your truth. Draw your boundaries. And when it's time to walk away, walk proudly. Because you're not just leaving the person who hurt you. You're walking back to yourself. Thank you all for watching the video, and see you soon.